because this Michigan team can score. It's not like there's some stagnant bunch that relies on their defense.
Welcome
and
to the Street
Maybe we've
Podcast
got a little baby version of Wendell White, Reggie Bush cooking with Katron Allen, Nick Singleton. I mean, Katron Allen runs the ball. Nobody wants to tackle and people bounce off
I
of
think
him.
he can win us games. I think,
Welcome to the
thank you
Straight
for your
from the
service,
Crest
Cliff.
podcast.
But, I go back and watch last year's game.
Crest listeners, Stat Guy Chris here to remind you that this episode is brought to you in part by our friends over at Protocol Beverage. Made by a few dudes in Erie, PA who wondered, why doesn't zero-carb beer exist? Protocol's new light shift gives you the ultimate beer experience with 0 carbs, a mere 80 calories, and they're shifting to what light beer should be. Savor the crisp, refreshing taste without compromising on flavor. Thanks, Protocol.
Welcome back to the Straight from the Crest podcast. I'm your host, Michael David Kresovich. As Penn State keeps winning, we're going to continue to cover it. Big Game Beck on the show today. Garrett is back, his first time in 2 weeks after he took a rest week last week with load management. We renewed his contract. He's back on the payroll here. We're going to talk a little Penn State, Notre Dame, talk about Penn State's win over Boise State that propelled them into this college football playoff national semifinal upcoming Thursday night, 7:30 on ESPN. First and foremost, this show is presented by Protocol Beverage. Must be 21 in order to enjoy. Type in your zip code on their website, find the closest distributor, and hit them up. Big shout out to the boys over there. Fellas, Penn State survives, advances, another double-digit win. Go to Garrett first. Garrett, how was your week off, and how glad are you to be back here today?
Mikey, I got to say, that's probably the best intro you've ever had. That was sexy, man. That was pure. Good stuff, brother. Yeah, good to be back. We had a little battle with management, re-upping the contract, but we're here. And, we're ready to get into some offensive play calling takes and break down the Fighting Irish and the Nits and in the Orange Bowl. I mean, has Penn State, this be the first time ever Penn State's won 2 New Year's Six games in 1 year. So there's a lot on the line riding here.
Yeah, record 16th game of the season for the Nittany Lions. You just brought up play calling here. I'm going to go over to Beck here because Beck and I obviously go back and forth on our play calling philosophies, whether it's NFL or college. Justin, what was your biggest grievance of that Boise State game that you had with Andy Koldenicki, or any specific play jump out to you from that game that was either a head scratcher or you really liked that some people didn't like?
Yeah, I think about that game, particularly the pass game, we hit the deep shot early to Amari Evans, and it felt like we just kept going to that well over and over and over again. We looked for that post, I want to say, at least 3 more times throughout the game, and we only got him on the first one. And against a team that was blitzing as heavily as Boise State did, I didn't quite understand why we were going with those like 5-step drops and looking for deep balls. And I feel like we didn't utilize a ton of quick game or intermediate game, and it felt like it was run the ball, take a deep shot. I would have liked to see us try and come up with some quick game answers to combat the blitz that they were running. And I just didn't see us doing that. I also felt like we got in our own way a little bit when we were running the ball as efficiently as we were. Some of the short yardage situations where we were going to the pass, I felt like it was unnecessary. I understand you can't become one-dimensional and you want to keep the defense honest. But even with them selling out for the run, we were still hitting 8 yards a carry. So I think those are my 2 biggest takeaways. I thought the short and intermediate pass game was lacking or almost non-existent. And I feel like we got a little too cute with some of our play calling. Short yardage situation, we're getting 8 yards a run, hand the ball off.
Yeah, completely agree with you there. Garrett, this question's for you. Penn State intercepted Maddox Madsen 3 times. They really contained Ashton Genty last week, went for 100 yards. We also saw an absence of Abdul Carter for 2.5, 3 quarters. Your overall thoughts on the way Penn State's defense played in the victory?
I thought they played really solid. I think the secondary still, the back 7 and really the back 4, if there is a weakness on the defense, still continues to be the weakness. But with that being said, there was so much focus on bottling up Genty, who really did have that kind of that hold your breath ability on every single play. You saw it on the 3rd and 21, I think late in the 3rd quarter. which was I thought was interesting. Really, the one time you couldn't put 8 in the box is on 3rd and 21 because you're assuming they're going to have to air it out, and that was the one time he was able to kind of take advantage of a light box. And so I was just reading today, 33 broken tackles. I mean, he was unbelievable, and I think he's going to be really good in the league. And I thought we did a really good job against him. I thought Madsen was decent. I thought he was decent when he had time to throw, which is what you see a lot. Protection beats coverage a lot of the time, and the Boise State's protection held up once Abdul Carter went out of the game. Just one less guy to have to worry about. I thought Vanover played well, and had a pretty not clutch, but a needed sack later in the game. But overall, I thought the defense was solid. I will really real quick echo Justin a little bit, and I thought this really could have been another 38 or 45 to 14 game. We did everything we could from a play calling perspective offensively to keep Boise State in the game. I think the game is over if you continue to run the ball and you don't go read option after the turnover where Drew fumbles the ball trying to pull it. Drew probably had 3 or 4 bad reads on read option game where the D end is sitting there and the backer is there as well waiting for it. Hand the ball off. And I don't even know why you have to go read option in those situations. Just keep running inside and outside zone. I thought we kind of kept, we kept Boise State hanging around a little bit more than we could have because the defense bottled up their one guy. And so we'll talk more about it, but Penn State can't afford to do those type of things going forward. You can get away with it when you're playing a bunch of 2 and 3 stars. You won't get away with it these next 2 weeks.
Yeah, on the show last week, completely agree with you there. We talked about Boise State had some playmakers, and Matt Lauder and Cameron Camper, the former Indiana transfer. They had a few grabs. Lauder's a tremendous tight end. I think he's going to be a very special player. Solid team, solid win overall. But let's talk about the play of Drew, because he had 2 of the better throws on Justin referenced the deep post touchdown. He had 3 very, very nice throws, but he also had a couple of very intermediate passing situations where he either completely missed the throw or it was a read situation. So this is questions for both of you. We'll go to Jay first here. Just assess the play of Drew Aller in that quarterfinal matchup.
Yeah, I mean, obviously he has big flashes. 3, I would say it was 3 really nice throws. The first touchdown to Tyler, I thought that he did a really good job staying composed in the pocket and waiting for him to uncover himself. The deep post was obviously like 10 out of 10 throw. And then he did a good job with Tyler's second touchdown, putting it in a place where Tyler could make a play on it. It felt very boomer bust. And I don't even want to put that entirely on Drew, because I feel like the play calling was boomer bust. They had him taking so many deep shots. He didn't have any gimmies, right? There were no layups in the play calling sheet. It was throw the ball 40 yards downfield or hand it off. I think that was, again, like I said in the intro, I feel like that's where we were lacking the most, is the pass game couldn't get into a rhythm because it was all just deep shots. It was so much boomer bust. And I'd like to see us come with a little bit of a different game plan against Notre Dame. I'll agree with Garrett, though. There's no reason to pull that. And when you look at the view, I don't know what he's seeing that he wants to pull it, because the DN and linebacker are waiting there for him. But overall, it was still a winning performance. He kept the ball out of harm's way outside of the fumble. He made some really big time throws, and he missed some throws that fortunately they didn't compound, turn into bigger mistakes. So overall, I think it was a solid performance. Definitely wasn't the best. And if we're going to beat Notre Dame, he's going to have to play better. I think he's capable of it. We'll just have to see what the play calling and how he performs Thursday, and how it turns out.
Yeah. I mean, definitely a more talented defense he's going to have to go against. But over to you, G. Your thoughts on Drew's game?
Yeah, I thought he was solid. A couple missed throws. Warren played a really good game, but had a couple uncharacteristic drops. Late in the second quarter, Penn State was trying to push the ball down the field a little bit and score. It felt like 3 or 4 straight shot plays down the field. Texas's wide receiving core, Ohio State's wide receiving core, Alabama's wide receiving core, make one of those 3 or 4 plays and score a touchdown. I think Omari Evans dropped one. Trey Wallace might have dropped one as well, and Tyler Warren dropped all tough balls, but an elite receiving core. And not to say Tyler Warren is an elite. I'm not putting him in there, but an elite wide receiver core catches one of those 3 balls. And so that's not on Drew. I mean, I thought he was dropping, especially on the deep balls, outside of the one which was a decision where there should have been offensive pass interference. It felt more of a guess. Any 50-50 opportunity was really a perfect ball for a receiver to make a play. So, I think he probably would have liked to have the one ball back that was a little high to Warren. You expect Tyler to catch that. With that being said, kind of got the zone to move and he was thrown away from where the guy could have made a play. You just kind of got to make that play if you're, a receiver or pass catcher. So I feel confident in Drew. I think he's confident. He's definitely dialed up. He's still not he's still a little passive at times, I would say, but he's definitely more aggressive than he was last year. He's more confident than he was last year, and he's willing to put the ball into places that might be a little more risky, but he seems to have a little bit more trust in his receivers at times. With that being said, I wouldn't always trust my receivers in his situation as well. And so I think that's why he's a little bit more picky than maybe sometimes we want him to be, just because I think he knows who he's throwing to.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you can throw 25% of your passes, which he did, completions for a touchdown. He only completed 13 passes. Tyler Warren was leading receiver with 6 catches, and the next was 3 receptions for Trey Wallace, and 3 of his passes of his 13 completions went for a touchdown. But I think we talk about these 3 SFTK stats every week for Penn State. We talk about time of possession, third down conversion, and turnover battle. Penn State lost all 3 of those, but they somehow won the game. So that was pretty cool there. So now survive and advance. Penn State is playing in the national semifinals, which at the beginning of the year, we all discussed this. Oh, I hit first touchdown last week. No big deal, Garrett. Said Tyler Warren.
I know
Tyler Warren.
He said Dominic Luka or Tyler Warren.
I said Tyler.
Is there
Warren,
another?
Tyler Warren
And also,
scored.
is there another fact check? We won. What did you say? What was the ST? What was the straight from the crest stats again?
Sure. We put on 3 factors. Stat guy Chris talks about. That's how you win games.
Okay.
You got to be better on third down, control time possession, and have less turnovers. Penn State was 5 for 13 on third down. They had 8 less minutes possessions. They won the turnover battle.
We won turnovers. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So yep.
Still
we're
2
gonna
or 3
fact check.
though. So
Yeah, stat guy Chris. Sorry, he sent that in there. But it's Notre Dame. This is the college football world. I saw a bunch of tweets earlier in the week being like, outside of Philly right now, the area is just Catholics and Penn State. Obviously, I am partial to Notre Dame. I've always liked the Irish. I've been taking slack for it for years. This is a tough game. Obviously, I'm pulling for Penn State, but I think it's great for the college football world. Justin, your thoughts on what 2 massive brands colliding mean to viewership and Eastern Pennsylvania?
Yeah, definitely a huge game.
what does this game mean to Eastern Pennsylvania?
From a fan base perspective, like 2 massive fan bases, 2 massive programs. It's exciting. I think that really the Final Four this year as a whole is pretty exciting matchup. I mean, it's 4 like iconic programs coming together. So as far as the Eastern Pennsylvania stuff, I live on the western side. We don't have a whole lot of Notre Dame fans over here. But I have heard that there is a strong Notre Dame contingent over there. So I don't have
Garrett,
a comment there, but
Garrett, this is Penn State's 16th game of the season. It's Notre Dame's 15th. How's fatigue going to play a role in this game?
Yeah, I think all 4 teams are battling that at this point. I'd say Ohio State probably is battling it the least. They've probably benefited the most from the sort of longer layover because it has given their already decimated offensive line time to gel or re-gel, if you will. And I'd say Penn State is probably close to the healthiest of the group. I'd say they're definitely healthier than Notre Dame. And will be way healthier than Notre Dame if Abdul Carter is okay to go. Which, judging by some social media, we're going to do some investigative work here, and we have been on the case. I know JB has been on the case, but our resident Star Wars expert, but it seems like he will be okay to go. But we're going to talk a little bit about Jeremiah Love. I mean, he has not looked good in practice. We've seen some videos, big brace on the knee, just not moving very well. And he's been their leading rusher, 8 out of 13 games, 8 out of 12 games or so. It might be 9 out of 14. So, their leading tackler out for the for the rest of the season. I think it's Riley for his last name, but just a big losses on the back end of Notre Dame's defense as well. So teams are nicked up. That's how it's going to go when you're 15, 16 games into the season. But it looks to me like Penn State might have the health advantage heading into Thursday night's game. Yeah,
kind of another injuries are common obviously this time of the year. You guys both touched on it, but let's talk about injuries. We already addressed Abdul Carter. Us three consensus, he's probably going to play. That's what we're hearing. That's what we're seeing. That's what everyone's hearing. That's what everyone's seeing. But a big part of Notre Dame's offensive success this year is the run game. Not outside of the running backs, Riley Leonard has put up some pretty impressive rushing numbers. He's scored 15 rushing touchdowns on the season. But what has been kind of the catalyst of that run success is tight end Cooper Flanagan, which he played briefly against Georgia last week. He only caught the ball 3 times, but head coach Marcus Freeman said he's out. So that's something else to look out for. We mentioned Riley Leonard. Of course, the transfer from Duke comes over after Sam Hartman goes pro. He's in Washington. He's completed 66% of his passes. He has 33 total touchdowns, 18 through the air, 15 on the ground. Jeremiah Love and Jadardian Price are the running backs. Love was banged up, played limited against Georgia, but he does have 16 touchdowns, over 1,000 yards. Just a great backfield there. On their receiving room, it's pretty parallel to Penn State. Bo Collins is their leader with 37 catches and 458 yards, but he's just 3 touchdowns on the season. Outside of Collins, Jaden Greathouse is another. It's a great name. 359 yards there. Kicker Mitch Jeter, transfer from South Carolina, is 11 for 16 on the year. And you mentioned their leading tackler, Jack Kaiser. He's out, 75 tackles. Terrific safety in Xavier Watts, who is second on the team with 68 tackles, a team high 6 interceptions. And Riley Mills Riley Mills is the one out.
Riley Mills is out, yeah.
He is
That's
their best
huge.
pass rusher. He has 7.5 sacks on the season, which he is a monster. But let's talk Notre Dame here, because this is a team that has rattled off 10 straight wins since they lost to Northern Illinois. Great program. I have a lot of history with Northern Illinois. I led them to a MAC championship appearance. I'm not going to talk about what happened in that game. But ever since Notre Dame's played Northern Illinois and fell by 2 back in September, they've rattled off 10 straight, and that's including 2 double-digit victories over both Indiana and Georgia in the playoffs. And outside of a 7-point win against Louisville, they've won every single game by double digits. Justin, how has this Notre Dame team changed since that one of the biggest upsets in the last 10 years in college football?
Yeah, I mean, I think one, Riley Leonard played very poorly in the game against Northern Illinois, and we've seen his game step up. I think they also were completely comfortable, or they became completely comfortable in their identity after that game. They're a physical team. They want to play the game in a phone booth, for lack of a better word, and they have just completely embodied that. So I think once a team understands their win conditions and understands who they are and how they win, and they accept it, even if it's not the flashiest thing in the world, I think that can be super powerful. So I think we saw that happen with them. Obviously, as you mentioned, they have a ton of tremendous athletes as well. Jeremiah Love has some of the craziest highlights on the year. He's so fast, and he has such a dynamic playmaking ability. And if they're without him, I think that's a big deal for the Notre Dame team. Even though their second and third running backs are also very capable, I don't think that they're Jeremiah Love. I think they've also really rallied around Freeman. I think he's a really good coach. That special teams play, I think that's something that Franklin has to watch out for. Now, I don't know that they'll run the exact same thing where they go 11 on, 11 off, 11 on. But I can imagine that the Notre Dame team tries to get something for free and tries to pick up a 4th and 3 by manipulating special teams. So Franklin has to be ready for that. And I think he will be.
Yeah, I mean, the special teams, Marty Biaggi does a great. He spent time at Ole Miss and Purdue, I believe. So he's a Big Ten guy. But you're right. That was gonna be my next topic. But I'll go over to Garrett. Garrett, Notre Dame's a team that brought back 6 starters on offense, 6 or 8 on 9 on defense. They're the only team in college football history to defeat an AP opponent in every single calendar year. Obviously started off against A&M, Army, Navy, Georgia, and Indiana. They've been the only team. Who on the Penn State side it really needs to step up or play their best game outside of just a great overall performance? Who kind of is it the play of Drew? Does Drew need to play a spectacular game, or is it one of these players such as we talk about every week, such as Trey Wallace on the outside? Who needs to play their A-plus game to propel the Nittany Lions to the national title game?
Yeah, it's a good question. Notre Dame's going to play a lot of man. They're the highest rate. They play the highest rate of man-to-man, deep man coverage in the country. A lot of single high with a robber underneath, and so we're going to have to win a few one-on-ones outside, and it can be done. I mean, we saw Arian Smith for Georgia have a big gain against them. We saw Cash Jones, who's a walk-on, number 32 for Georgia, get loose on a wheel route for a touchdown. The Gunnar Stockton had over 260 yards passing against this secondary, and Georgia has been abysmal all year running the ball. And so Notre Dame really didn't have to respect the run very much and still couldn't defend Georgia and the speed on the outside as well as you would think. And, I would say that what's interesting about Notre Dame, and I don't want to, it's a weird game and it's a weird setup because, on paper in the skill positions, I mean, we match up similarly, but I'd say at almost every position, we might actually have a little bit of a nod because they haven't played a ton of teams with a quarterback who has a pulse. Tyler Shuck at Louisville. I'd say Miller Moss at USC. I mean, he lit up Notre Dame. He had almost 400 yards passing. I would say that if the receiver group can make 3 or 4 plays, it's going to be hard because they're already going to have to focus so much on Katron Allen. They're going to have to focus so much on Nick Singleton and Warren. If Omari Evans and Trey Wallace can make a couple plays, I don't know how Notre Dame can score point for point with this type of defense. You go through the schedule. They do not have a receiver with a game over 90 yards all season. And to be honest, outside of a 98-yard run by Jeremiah Love against Indiana, yes, they ran the ball well against Virginia and Army, but they're just an interesting team where they're very complementary. The biggest thing with Notre Dame is they win the turnover battle. So I'd say a combination of taking care of what I'm trying to get at. It's got to be it's a team game. It's got to be a team effort. The one group every week is the wide receiver group. Can it win one-on-ones? Yes, it's always going to be obvious. But if Penn State can hold down the penalty yardage and not shoot themselves in the foot, win on special teams, or even stay neutral on special teams and not turn the ball over, Notre Dame struggles in those situations. And so teams, I was listening to our dear friend Josh Pate, and you say over a course of a season, it's like, man, well, teams just keep handing them the game. Well, it's like after a while, it's not handing them the game. They're just taking it from other teams. And that's what they did against Georgia. Notre Dame scored 17 points in 50 seconds. One of them was off a turnover. The other was a kick return. Outside of that, they had 6 points. So Georgia kind of handed them the game, but Notre Dame consistently takes it. So I'd say the wide receivers got to make plays, and Penn State has to take care of the football. If that happens, at each individual position group, Penn State has a little bit of an edge against Notre Dame wall to wall.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really interested to see how the Penn State wide receivers, because as you mentioned, the single covered, single high, they play a lot of man and they have great cover corners. So I think it's going to be about creating separation, keeping Drew, giving him an extra second to have second to throw, and really just simplifying his life. And that's both on the wide receivers and Coach Andy Koltanecki.
Mike, can I say something real quick? I would not be surprised if Notre Dame played a lot more zone in this game.
Okay.
I would say that when Penn State have struggled a bit, it has been when teams have sat in zone, because Drew sometimes is a little hesitant to try to fit the ball into tight areas.
That makes sense.
And it's harder for Koltanecki to scheme things open against a zone. He can scheme things open against man, but against zone, sometimes it's a little bit harder. The guys, it's hard to move guys off their spots. So I just wanted to say, I'd be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if that number, snaps that Notre Dame plays in man might be a tad lower this game. And Al Golden's a great defensive coordinator.
Al Golden's awesome.
He's a man. Really like him. Obviously has a long tie with Penn State and Pennsylvania football, being at Temple. So he's a really bright guy. I'm sure that he is going to have something cooked up for the Penn State offense.
Yeah, one thing that also I'm interested to see, Notre Dame has faced the 5th least amount of 12 personnel all year, and with Dinkins and Warren on the field, which has been a formation Penn State has ran since about midway through the season. I'm really interested to see how Notre Dame defends that personally. But with that being said, I'm seeing 1.5 Notre Dame, the over-under at 45.5. Justin, I'm going to go to you here. Who's winning this game?
Penn State's winning the game.
It's that simple.
It's that simple. I mean, of course, I'm going to pick Penn State. Come on. But so one thing that I think will be interesting, and if Abdul's healthy, and we'll see what happens. But it looks
he's not healthy. He's going to play. He's not healthy.
Well, yeah, but okay.
He's sick, bro.
If we can use Abdul
the
way that we want to use Abdul, which I'm going to take the beginning of the Boise State game, right? We made a pretty clear evaluation that the best front seven that we had was putting Amin Vanover at the end and moving Abdul to outside linebacker and running a 4-3. So against Notre Dame, a very run-heavy team, a team that doesn't pose a ton of threats in the passing game, I would not be surprised to see us go back to that 4-3 look if we can use Abdul the way that we want to use Abdul. So with that said, I think this is going to be a game control game. I think that it's going to be a low-scoring game, but I hesitate to take the under. I think 45 is really low. I could see it being 27-21 Penn State, 28-24. Like, that line's really good. I'm going to go 27-21 Penn State. So that's Penn State, the over, and obviously we cover, but that's because we're dog.
All right, Justin agrees that Vegas knows what they're doing. Breaking news. He said that line's really good. Garrett, you're wearing your Shamrock green.
I am.
How's this
Not
game
Kelly
going?
green though.
Oh, stop.
Yeah, it's a weird type of pick game, just because it relies on so much volatility. It really is going to rely on turnovers, and it's also going to rely on, can Penn State get Riley Leonard to the ground? I've seen Notre Dame in person this year. I watched them play at Texas A&M, and in a very evenly matched game, a very offensively painful game on both ends. And the difference was A&M just couldn't get Riley Leonard to the ground. He was able to maneuver. He is probably the best in the country. He's low-key athletic. He is really good.
He's sneaky athletic.
Sneaky. Yeah.
First guy in, last guy out kind of guy.
Yeah, just was going to say it takes coaching well, high IQ player. But he's not going to go and run for 80, 90 yards, even though he did run for 80 yards against Georgia. Unless there's some sort of total breakdown. But what he's going to do is he's going to move around the pocket well. He's going to be hard to get to the ground. So I'm sure the defensive staff knows that. So the keys are him, and the keys are turnovers. If Penn State can take care of those two things, I feel cautiously optimistic we see him in Atlanta against Ohio State in a couple weeks. So I'll take Penn State. I'm going to take them assuming, and I will say this, assuming that there isn't play calling malpractice like there was against Boise State. and assuming that Penn State still hasn't played their best game to date this year, I still don't think they've played a complete game. You have to do it in this setup, and the camp's been a little quiet this week outside of Abdul tweeting. I just think it's a business-like mentality, and I do think they get it done. And if they don't turn the ball over, I could see them getting it done 24-10, 24-14, something like that.
I've been going back and forth on this game. Originally, I thought that Penn State would win, and later, this was right after the Georgia game when I was creating hypotheticals in my mind. I was thinking about how Penn State's going to neutralize Riley Leonard, how the Penn State offense is going to do against a very talented Notre Dame defense, and whether Drew would create plays on his own and turn into a playmaker. But it's really hard. Riley Leonard is a seasoned veteran. He is a guy that has completely transformed this Irish program. Coach Freeman is a great coach. We talked about their special teams play. So I don't know if you can see this.
You got to hold it closer.
Yeah, almost. Nope, you're blocking. I see it. Okay.
This isn't Rudy.
All right.
Give me,
all right, Corso.
Give me the Nittany Lions. Give me the Nittany Lions. I
like it.
I think this is a 24-20 Penn State victory. I wouldn't be surprised if Drew had an early turnover. He is susceptible to those against aggressive blitzing defenses. But I think this is a game that Penn State's running game steps up. Notre Dame ran for just 56 yards. Garrett, you talked about their stretch of luck. They're that 17, not even luck. I wouldn't even say luck. It was their aggressiveness that turned into points. I don't think Penn State is as susceptible to those turnover-worthy plays as Georgia is, since Georgia was playing with Gunnar Stockton. I think this is a game that Penn State probably trails early, maybe even at the half, but I think it's a 24-20 win, and I think we'll be here in about a week to talk about Penn State and Ohio State in the national title game.
The blitz is such a big thing. Like, the Boise State got to Drew more than any other teams got to Drew. The offensive line, Kotelnicki, you have to do a better job dealing with it, and then I'm 100% on board with it.
Yeah, and I would say, last thing I would say, a major key alert, DJ Khaled, Miami, Mr. 305, Pitbull. South Beach Jimmy needs to show up. That's a major key. And in doing that, Notre Dame has not trailed all year since the Northern Illinois game. They play well out ahead. They can be the only game that they've trailed most of the game was the Northern Illinois game, and they looked sketchy in that situation. If Penn State can get them down early and force this kind of offensively challenged team at times to push, that is probably the biggest key, I would say. And so let's see how the early part of the game transpires. It will be, it'll be a close one if Notre Dame's up early or it's tied. But if Penn State can get up early, they could get a couple hands on the throat and see if they can kind of knock them out early.
It's going to be a heck of a game to watch. 7:30 Thursday night, ESPN. Hopefully this isn't our last show of the season. We're not getting into recruiting talk yet. But I appreciate you guys joining me here. Appreciate you guys listening. Enjoy the game. Enjoy the ride. This has been a crazy, crazy season. And go Nittany Lions. Thank you, everyone.